All right, today I'm going to introduce how you can use .NET Core on Mac or Linux with VS Code instead of using .NET exclusively on Windows with Visual Studio. So I'm going to open a terminal. You need to have .NET installed. So I'm going to check I have .NET version 5.0.201. That might be the latest. You can go ahead and get that from Microsoft. Just look for .NET, I can type this, .NET Core Mac, and you should get to the downloads page. I'm not going to walk through setting that up, but you just download it and run it. You can even use an RPM on Linux. And for those of you who are using Linux remotely, there's even an Amazon AMI with .NET Core pre-installed, so you can SSH into that. I'll show that in a later video. Anyway, so I've got .NET installed. First thing I want to do is I want to create a solution. I'm going to go to my temp directory and just start by creating a solution by saying .NET new solution. I can type it out, solution, or SLN. And then I do -O for output, the directory I want it to be in. So I'm going to just call it .NET on Mac. Now it'll create a solution directory, and then the next thing you want to do is you want to get Visual Studio Code, download and install that for your Mac or Linux system. It's available cross-platform. It's taking a while for this to install. Okay. So we can see here I can go to .NET on Mac, and it'll show you the directories. I can open the current directory, and it'll show my file structure. It just has a folder called .NET on Mac, and it has a solution file. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to open VS Code in that directory, and you'll see that in just a moment. Yeah, trust the authors of temp. I'm going to update that later. All right, so I've got a .NET on Mac folder. In that I have a .NET solution file, and this is the same type of solution file that Visual Studio will create. I'll just move that aside for a second. I'm going to use the command line, the .NET CLI, to create a class library project within that and run some code. So, not code. I want to do .NET new, and instead of new solution, I want new class lib, and I'm going to specify the output directory. I'm going to say my class lib. This is a .NET class library, much like you would do for any other system. You can create a .NET, is it a console? As well. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's run a hello world on our console. What I want to show is each, our class lib creates a CS project file and a template class file with nothing in it. As well, it has our object directory, which we don't care about, gets regenerated. Same thing with our console app. Well, let's take our program. Look, it's already written hello world for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do .NET build. All right, .NET build. And you can see it's got a warning somewhere here on my solution. Unable to find a project to restore. Okay. So then what I want to do is I want to add my project to my solution. I want to .NET add my class lib, and I can specify just the folder, or I can specify the CS project file. So for this one, I'm going to add .NET solution add. So .NET SLN add my class lib, and it's messing with me now. .NET solution add. There we go. So now when I go to my solution, you can see I have information on here, the project associated with it, as well as it shows our build output. Now I can also do .NET solution add, and then I'll add my console app. And I'm just going to specify the directory. It'll do the same thing. It added it over here as a project section in my solution folder. Now the third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do .NET new, and I'm going to call it .NET new xunit project. The type of template xunit is included by default with .NET Core. NUnit is also available if you want to use that, or MS Test. And I'm going to just call it my test. Or I'll call it my tests. I need a -O for the output directory. If the directory already existed, or if it was in the current directory, which isn't my solution directory, then I could have done it. All right, so let's take a look at what we have now. We've got three things. We've got the class lib, we've got the console app, and we've got the tests. And the test project is not added to my solution, so I'm going to add my tests to my solution. And now I have all three: my class lib, my console, and my tests. So let's start. We've got our console app. And it's here at program.cs. Let's say hello .NET on Mac. All right, I'm going to do .NET build. And now it will build my solution as well as all the projects under my solution. Take just a moment, and then I'll have a bin directory that appears under here, under my console. I've got a bin, and I've got my console.dll. And then let me see, .NET run, is that going to detect my program? Okay, so I'm going to go to my console, and I'm going to go to my bin folder, and then to the debug folder. It builds in debug by default. And then .NET 5, you're probably familiar with this. Now, I'm still not sure if it will just detect it here or not. Okay. Couldn't find the project. Maybe I can go. There we go. So I'm in my console app directory. I need to specify the project directory or use the current directory. So it does hello.net on Mac. I can change that to at last. And then I can .NET run as well. I can go back to my solution directory, and I can say .NET run my console -- project my console. I'll take one moment here. 2 moments, 3. There we go. Hello.net on Mac at last. So it does take a little bit of time to boot it up, like the JVM, although the JVM has definitely gotten better in recent years on its boot up time. So let's go ahead and combine all this. What we want to do is we want to have our console app use our library. So I'm going to do my class lib, and in here I'm going to take my class 1. I'm going to rename it to greeter. This is an old one. And my greeter is going to send a greeting, right? It's going to return a string when I call greet. And I'm going to optionally pass a name. Actually, let's put a little bit of logic in here. Nah. All right, if I can figure out how to type, we'll get this in. Okay, and then we just want to return hello, comma, name. That's a good start. And by default, it will pass world. Otherwise, it'll pass your name or my name or whoever's name our greeter is greeting. All right, so now let's go back to our console app and have our console app use our greeter, use our greeter from our class library. First thing we need to do is we can reference it relatively or absolutely. So I can do .net, and I can refer to the project, my console, add reference, I think. Reference, okay. And then, of course, my class lib. I've got to figure out the order here. .net add my console. There we go. So now we can see reference my class lib added to the project, my console. I'll go to my console.cs project, and it includes a reference to /my class lib, the CS project. So now I can include libraries from my class lib, my class library. And so what I want to do is I want to include my greeter in here. So I'll do greeter, greeter getter equals new greeter, and let's see, it's not finding it, but it's not throwing an error. What I need is to using my class lib. And you can see it detected that there. Now I should be able to, so I figure out the right short, go to the definition, there we go. No definition for greeter, we're gonna run into trouble for that. Oh, no, did I really put using my class lib here? In order to make this easier, I'm going to make all of the namespaces .net on Mac. That way I don't have to import it. So my class lib and my console both have the same namespace, .net on Mac. I can do .net build to make sure that everything's working fine. All right, so now instead of writing that, we want to write greeter.greet. And we can actually go to our definition now. There we go. And we can actually click from one to the other. I can go to the definition of greeter, my class library from my console app. So these are my different projects, my class lib, my console, my tests, which we haven't gotten to yet. All right, so let's go. Hello world. We want to .net run my console. Just project. And it should say hello world. There we go. And what we want to do is we also want to test it with a name. So let's pass in a name. I'm going to pass in my own name. And it's hello Aaron. Great. So we've got our class lib working with our console app. Our console app references our class library, and everything's good. Let's go to my test as well. Let's write a unit test. We want to, again, we want to make our namespace the same. And then what we want to do is we want to create a greeter test. We'll just rename this file. So now we don't need to use our console app. We can actually write a test, test default greeting, which should be hello world. And we'll just do var greeting equals, well, let's do greeter, pumpkin eater, var greeting equals greeter.greet. And then what we can do is using xunit, you see this was already included here. We have assertion, so we can assert, we can try to assert equal. And our expected greeting is hello world, and we'll check our greeting here. So note our test is in 3 phases. We're doing our arrange step here. We're doing all of our setup. We're creating our greeter class. We're acting. We're performing the greet function and capturing the greeting as our result. And then we're asserting that our greeting looks equal to what we're doing. And notice also for other test frameworks like xunit, you might have an annotation, or rather an attribute here. Annotations are Java. Attributes are the C# equivalent, using brackets instead of at signs. We have a fact instead of a test. I think that's a little too cute by far, but that's how they did it, and we'll use that. So now, rather than .NET project, what we need to do is we actually need to .NET add. We need to add a reference to our class library, right? So we can try and test my tests, but .NET is not found. I do all these typos on purpose just so you guys can feel smarter than me. All right, the typer namespace greeter could not be found. Well, that's because we haven't added it. You might remember we added a reference to my class lib to the my console app, but we didn't add it to my tests. So let's do that right now. .NET add my tests reference class lib. You can also, I can be in the my tests folder, right? And then I can do .NET add reference, and I can just go directly to my class lib. And because I'm in the folder where my CS project file is, it says by default .NET add to the project of the current directory. Let's click. I swear it changes that every time. .NET, okay, reference my class lib added to the project, and we can see that in our CS project that it references in this item group the // my class lib. So now our greeter should be found if all went well. So let's try and run .NET test. We're already in the my test directory, so we just type .NET test. A total of 1 test file, so it found our test. Good. Oh, we've got a failure. Expected hello world actual exclamation point. Oh yeah, we didn't add an exclamation point, so we'll just add that here. Run our .NET test again. And we've got green, our test passed. Now you can also actually run your tests using the VS Test plugin, and I already have it installed. Let me see if I can remember how to do that. I want to go to my extensions. So I installed the .NET Core Test Explorer. You can just go to that. I can click uninstall and reinstall. But you install the .NET Test Explorer, you get this little beaker or flask, whatever, and then you can see I clicked on the beaker. It says Discovering Test. It's going to look in my solution for the default rules, which I think is a project that has tests in the name and a test or a class that has tests in it. So we'll give it a minute here, and then we'll figure out what it did wrong. So VS Code is actually pretty cool. It's a pretty good text editor, but it has a lot of support for doing stuff, no surprise, with C#. You can treat it like an IDE. You can associate your solution to your projects. You might even be able to do that in the IDE, but I wanted to show you from the command line. But you can run tests. So we have here, it finally found a test. Default greeting. It shows my test, and I can run it. And my test explorer, or whatever it's called, it's running awfully slow. I bet that's because I have parallels running Windows at the same time. And this is a nice thing, is once you have .NET Core set up from the command line and you're comfortable working with the command, the .NET CLI, and using Visual Studio Code instead of Visual Studio, then you don't have to boot up Parallels to get access to Windows to use Visual Studio to write your C# code. Finally, I don't know, that was so long though. My default greeting worked. So I'm going to just add another test, right? I'm going to create another fact, right? And the idea here is that you write a statement, right? So I would say something like greets a person by name. And we'll just copy all this in here. And we'll change this. Okay, we've got a new greeter. That stays the same, but we greet and we pass in a name. So what we want to do is we want to create a string name, and the name's going to be Aaron. So it's going to say, hello, Aaron. I'm going to pass that name into my greet function with only one parenthesis. And then we should see hello, Aaron, right, instead of hello world. I can hit reload on discover tests. Hopefully it won't take all day. And I should have two tests now visible underneath the greeter test. Test default greeting and greets a person by name. No tests found. Oh, I must have done something wrong. Both test default greeting and test greet a person by name. So I'm going to click run, and it should run both of those tests. It looks like they didn't run. Oh, maybe it's just running slow. I must have had a typo in there that I couldn't see, and that Visual Studio Code wasn't warning me about. Okay, so they both passed, and then I clicked the other one. All right, so both my tests passed. What I want to do is I want to customize my greeter. So I'm going to do one more test, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We'll leave our program behind. We don't need our console app right now. But for my greeter, I want to create a constructor for my greeter. And I want to pass in a locale. Well, we'll just use a string. Location instead of locale. Locale has kind of a specific meaning these days. And I'll just do I will add a location. And then what I want to do is I want to create a new test. But instead of using fact, I'm going to use theory. Get it? Fact, theory. I get it too. It's not that funny. But instead of a fact, what I want to do is I want to public void test localized greeting. The idea being here that if you are in Japan, it might say, if it's the morning, you might say Ohio, Aaron. In Japan, you might say, or in China, you might say ni hao. In Spain, you might say hola. But we're going to go with Texas. Those new greeter. And we're passing in Texas as our location. So, of course, our greeter is going to say howdy. This is a string, but greeter.greet. Greeter. There we go. Thank you for the help. By name. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in inline data as another attribute here. And it's a function, actually. I'm actually going to pass in the name, or I'm going to pass in the locale, Texas, and then I'm going to pass the name of the person to greet. So I add these as parameters to my function, right? I want a string location and I want a string for the name of the person. Now I have variables. I'm going to show you how cool this is in just a moment. New greeter, location, and greeter.greet name. And so we should expect a certain assert.equal. Visual Studio Code has, it tries to help you complete, but it sometimes isn't very helpful. It's especially unhelpful when you're writing a plain text file, and it really doesn't want you to use plain simple words. It wants you to use these weird things that are indexed somewhere from, I don't know, the C# standard library or whatever. So you'll be typing, you know, it, and it'll, I don't know, come up with something really weird instead. All right, rant over for one moment. Assert equal, it should say, howdy, Aaron, for my greeting. And I can also leave this console behind. I can run from my terminal here. So I can .NET test. And I should have 3 passing tests. One moment while we wait for .NET to boot up. There is no argument given that corresponds to location. What's wrong with you, dear? Oh, my other tests are failing because of that. So, and I haven't even implemented howdy yet. So, let's see. Let's actually just call this default. And then if location equals default, we'll return hello. But if else, if location, actually, let's only do that. This will be our default. We don't have to specify that. So we'll just say if location equals Texas. Yeehaw. I lived in Texas. It's okay to make fun of Texas, even if you didn't live in Texas. So default, we're not going to use an else block. We're just going to return inner block. Return howdy, comma, name. I was going to leave out the exclamation mark, but of course in Texas they use an exclamation mark when they reach you. Sometimes. They might not always say howdy though. They might say something quite different. All right, I think we've got a working test. Let's go ahead and run all of our tests. First, let's see, we should have 3 tests now, right? We should have greet a person by name, we should have default greeting, and we should have scroll media, localized greeter. What are the odds on it saying test not found? Discovery tests. This is getting to be ridiculous. It's not normally this long. So I just go back here and I just type .NET test and run them from the console. All right, so we've got these two. They ran, and let's run all three. It's erased. This one's almost done though. Console for the win. One test file matches the pattern. So there is a config file that you can set, which will probably make it easier so that you don't actually have to find it, to just say search only in projects with test in the name. All right, actual howdy, Aaron. Looks like I forgot my comma and my space. That's easy enough to fix. Howdy, comma, space. All right. While we're at it, let's go ahead and fix this. So we want to specify also that our result is also passed in. And then let's go ahead. We're going to add another one for our default. Now, how did I do that? Did I specify the string default? I guess it doesn't matter. If location is Texas, it'll say howdy. If it's anything else, it should say hello. So I'm going to say Montana. I've been known to say howdy in Montana and get a howdy back. But our program doesn't know that. It should just say hello. All right, notice how here in Visual Studio Code it put an X here. I can actually go here to see where my test failure was. But I'm just going to run them all again. And I should have 4 tests now if everything's successful. And you can see here the inline data put the location of Texas here for this one test. Why won't you let me grab that? There we go. So I can see the output, or the input and the output. I can already see how this is going to fail, or it should succeed on the first one, but we're not getting our results. So what we need to do is we also need to pass in a string for expected reading. There we go. Let's not wait around for that. That one still failed. Now we've got 3 parameters to our inline data. Our location, our name, and our expected greeting, or our expected result. Let's race from the command line. Build failed. Oh, that was from the last turn when I didn't have the expected greeting. Build failed. This is crawling. My machine is about to take a dirt nap, I think. And I'd like to take a nap myself. Sans dirt. It looks like I might be running into trouble with not having saved the file as well. Let's rerun our tests. I suppose the best thing I could do is I could do a .NET build and tax my system a little bit more. But I think you guys all get the general idea. This last 10 minutes has just been kind of filler showing how to use different aspects of XUnit, and we'll cover XUnit in more detail in another post soon. So I'll fade out some music here. Just kidding, I don't have that kind of production value. It's just me in a yurt in the woods in Montana with a slow internet connection and an overheating computer. I might have to do like discovery. Okay, build succeeded. That's a good sign. Let's see if it detected my other test in here. In the meantime, we'll run a full .NET test from the console. I promise you it's not supposed to be this slow. See the spinning wheels? Very hypnotizing. Who's going to win? Visual Studio Code or the console? We all win when we can run our .NET tests on Mac or Linux. And even if you don't develop on Mac or Linux, there might be a reason to do this. Yay, our test completed. That reason being continuous integration. You can run your unit tests as long as you don't have a bunch of dependencies like, IIS or ADO.NET or SQL Server or Active Directory, any of those Microsoft systems that are still Windows only. I think you can get SQL Server on Linux now. But anyway, unit tests should be isolated. You should be able to run your unit tests in your continuous integration server on a Linux machine. I was about to say a low-powered Linux machine, but on this Mac with 32 gigs of memory and four cores, we'll say, it's dying. Anyway, our test passed both in Visual Studio Code. You can see hello, Aaron came up for Montana, and howdy, Aaron came up for Texas, in both of those. I think if we do verbose, then it'll show all the test results from the console. But let's not worry about that. Unknown switch. This will be me signing off. I'll figure out about -V. I was gonna sign off, but I'm just too curious to see what happens with verbosity level, blah blah blah. List the discovered tests instead of running the test. So -T should at least do the equivalent of hitting refresh over here, I guess. Stay where you're at. All right. I'm dying to find this verbosity thing. And my computer's dying from the heat and from being overtaxed with parallels and VS Code. I don't know. It looks like I thought this would run pretty quickly, but that's probably all that's happening when you hit refresh here. And it's saying something. The following tests are now available. Let's get back to you. .NET test up. So that's what I wanted. Still not there. All right. Quiet, normal, minimal, detailed. Let's do detailed. .NET test -V detailed. Detailed. Yeah. I have an all new kind of dyslexia. Dyslexia. There we go. We've got our list of tests. And now we'll kill that off and let them run. And if any of you are bored, whoa, it's giving us a lot of information about building. Ooh. Just kidding. It's still thinking test run. Looks like we're done executing task message many times over. Total of 1 test files match the specified pattern. Get on with it. Are you still here? This is not interesting. At least shouldn't be. But anyway, it says our 4 tests passed as opposed to only telling us the ones that failed. That's all that did. That's all for now. Thanks. Goodbye.